So hello everybody, again Edward Reyes. We continue our series actually. We had some intro videos. We're having insurance agents. We have a lot of different things to come. Today I have the pleasure of interviewing Dr. AJ. He's one of the providers that we use quite a bit to treat some of our clients, and he was very graceful enough to allow us to interview him today on a busy day, on a busy Friday. So today, just introduce yourself, Dr. AJ.
Sure. Yeah, my name is Dr. AJ Rabano. I'm a chiropractor. Been practicing since 1993. So, so my experience has been in the realm of working with athletes. We deal with, many of the Red Sox players, the Twins players, some of the Rays and Lightning, and a few of the Bucks players. And then, we've definitely. Our practices, we actually now are up to 11 practices throughout the Tampa Bay area, as well as in Orlando, and now moving into the Miami area. And our practices are very much holistic. So we do everything from hormonal replacement to women's health and men's health, and of course we see a lot of people who've been injured, whether it's in sporting activities or through the negligence of others, slip and falls or car accidents. So so our practices are really geared toward taking a person from whatever point of injury they're at and really trying to get them back to a point of health prior to what they were before the accident. In some cases, better.
Now, staying true to our series, and we'll cover multiple videos because clearly they do a lot of different things, but staying true to our series, we're going to talk about teenagers in auto accidents and those injuries. Clearly, being that he is a chiropractic doctor, we're going to discuss injuries. So tell me, Dr. AJ, and I know on my side what happens, and I discussed that in an earlier video. Tell me on your side what happens when a teenager comes in, if you can kind of walk me through that.
Sure. I think the teenage dynamic, and I failed to mention before, but actually part of my experience has been working with high school athletes,
okay,
as well as some college age athletes. One of my very first experiences right out of chiropractic school was to be a team physician for Morris Brown College, which was in Atlanta, and working with their track athletes and football players, and so you're talking about late teenagers, 18, 19, early 20s, and then when I moved back to New Jersey, I was a team physician for a couple of high schools in Monmouth and Ocean County, New Jersey. And the teen dynamic is somewhat different than the adult dynamic. Number one, you're dealing with kids who can bounce back quickly from injury.
Sure.
Their tendons, their ligaments, their muscles, they're young, so they have the availability to bounce back. Oftentimes, though, what gets missed in the diagnostic process is just because the symptoms of pain are gone doesn't mean that what could cause pain years and years down the road is not underlying. Things like disc injuries happen to teenagers, muscle sprains and strains, which may not seem like a big deal, but a muscle strain or a muscle sprain is actually in and of itself a permanent type injury.
Of course.
The way joints heal, the way muscles heal, is they don't form the normal or the actual muscle fibers. They heal by a scientific process that's called second intention.
Okay.
And what second intention means, Eddie, is that rather than forming new muscle, they form scars, they form adhesions. And then the scar tissue is way, way less adaptable than the normal muscle, ligament, or tendinous fibers.
So to sum it up, so what I think you're saying is basically when they have the injuries now, later in life it can affect them. They might not have the pain now, but it starts building the scar tissue, and then later on it can affect them with other activities and pain and future pain. Is that correct?
Sure, absolutely. And then the second thing, especially, not necessarily just for athletes, but they may develop coping mechanisms. So maybe they say they're not in pain, but their coping mechanism, if they're an athlete, instead of maybe they throw a ball, and instead of throwing with the right angle, they drop their arm a little bit because it's less painful, or there's no pain in that position, which can create a rotator cuff problem down the road. Or maybe their gait changes, the way they walk, the way they stand, that changes, and that also can become a source for earlier onset degenerative conditions.
Okay. Now walk me through the process. What happens when a teenager gets in an auto accident? A lot of times they come through me first. Sometimes they go to the doctor. It just depends. And let's say what happens when their first appointment, and this, because again, teenagers may be watching this, but most likely the parents are going to be watching this as well. Mm-hmm. And teenagers hopefully go to the parents for advice, because if they don't know any better, to make good decisions. So what happens when their first appointment, let's say they walk in the door, what happens then?
Sure. Well, in general, we always want to do just kind of a thorough history. We want to find out, is there anything, other than the accident, or, prior injuries or prior health issues that could affect their recovery or their reliance of pain. So the first thing is we're going to take a complete history. Then, we don't just focus, especially on a teenager, if they say they have neck pain or back pain, we may not just focus just on the specific area that they complain of, but literally to do a full body thorough exam. Because oftentimes, teenagers are also, mentally, a lot of times they just want to brush it off. It's no big deal. If you remember, kids, they don't want you to ever think there's a problem. Everything's cool.
Of course.
But ultimately, a lot of times, they're not telling us what's going on. They're trying to look good in front of their friends. They don't want to look injured.
Yeah.
And so we need to get past that. So a thorough examination is always in process. Now, if we find something in the examination, any kind of positive finding, and that could be reduction of motion, it could be what we call a positive orthopedic test, it could be a reduced grip strength finding.
Okay.
From there, we're either going to order some type of imaging study, whether it be an X-ray or likely an MRI if it seems like it's just a soft tissue injury without any fractures or broken bones.
Okay.
And then in our office, we also do something called small pain fiber testing, which is a nerve test that actually can objectively quantify pain. Certainly when you're in court or you're making a legal argument that facts are really what runs the day. So we try to do things that will give us a good objective measure of what's going on.
And on that subject, it is true. The insurance companies, they don't know you from what's on paper, right? There's two different things. There's treatment and then there's what's on paper. For the settlement side and for the proving our case side, we need diagnostics and we need reports. That's what holds the most weight for the legal side. For the healthcare side, that client is not just diagnosing, great, you know what happened, you know what's wrong with them, but now how do we fix it? So there's two sides to this, and we just got to find a happy balance to it, because we need to prove to the insurance companies that you are injured by doing reports, but at the same time we need treatment for you can actually get better. So there is an interesting dynamic there that we have to find a good balance, because if some places may do only a lot of reports and not as much treatment, and yes, the case is good, but you don't recover. And the other way could be all treatment and no reports, and then yes, you feel better, but we can't recover. So it has to have a happy dynamic, I would say. Tell me about what happens. Okay, so we talked about what happens when they come to the first exam, right? What happens after? I know you do chiropractic care, and then there's massage therapies, there's PT. I know what chiropractic care is, but kind of in a nutshell. I know that's your field and you can go on forever.
Sure.
But tell me, what exactly is chiropractic care and why is it important? And then walk me through massage therapy and physical therapy, just kind of get some ideas.
Sure. Yeah, we're a multidisciplinary approach, which means we incorporate, like Eddie said, a variety of specialties. So just starting with the chiropractic side, we deal predominantly with joints. It may be in the spine, it may be in an extremity, your shoulder, your elbow, your wrist, your hips, your knees, your ankles, even your jaw. Those are all joints. So where joints come together, you have what's called an articulation. And often with trauma, those joints get stuck.
Yes.
And when joints get stuck, it does not allow for normal blood flow. It may cause muscular spasm. So what we really specialize in is really making sure that joints and muscles are now working hand in hand by alleviating tension. And we've got a variety of ways to do that. We can do that by manually manipulating the joint. A lot of times people say, I want to get my back cracked or my neck cracked.
Of course, it's not really cracked, just so you guys know, it's not actually cracked. A lot of people get scared about chiropractic doctors.
Absolutely.
It's just putting it in place, but it's not being cracked.
Sure, it's a release of pressure.
It just makes a noise. That's it.
Absolutely. So, and that's the only one method that we use. We use instrumentation. Some people, sometimes we'll use a device that can actually create the better mobility within the joint. So really, ultimately what we do is we do work with the joints, but those joints also affect the nerve system. You know, that's why, you know, we are very adept at ordering MRIs when it's medically necessary, because, you know, those joints are, you know, part of the protective areas around your discs and your nerves and your spinal cord. So we need to make sure that we're up to speed on what's going on with that as well.
Now, why physical therapy and why massage therapy? Because I know that's all part of the typical regimen.
Sure. So, physical therapy is another modality really to work on what we call work hardening or re-strengthening. So, you know, it's one thing to go ahead and make somebody feel better, but then the next step is really, okay, what do we do to strengthen the muscles and the tendons and those connective tissues that may have been injured during a trauma. So that's why we incorporate actual, you know, doctors of physical therapy who will do, you know, therapy evals and then put together a strengthening program targeted for the specific joint. You know, we don't just work with the spine. Like I said, we work with all the other extremities. So, you know, a good physical therapy regimen is super important in getting somebody back at least as closely as possible to, you know, what they were before the crash.
Pre-accident, exactly.
Sure. And now, especially when it comes to dealing with teenagers, certainly, listen, our office is super conservative when it comes to prescribing medications. And I think that, and that's with anybody across the board, but I think even more so with a teenager. Obviously, you know, things that we're concerned with is, you know,
addiction problems.
Certainly, you know, if we can keep somebody from having it to become dependent on medication, then they're more likely not to ever develop an addiction. So, you know, that's one of our goals in treatment, is to get them as well as possible with hopefully the least amount of medication. Now listen, if medication is necessary, our doctors will prescribe up to a certain point. We don't prescribe narcotic medication, but if they need it, we can always refer to usually like an interventional pain specialist or some other specialist that can prescribe them something. But ultimately the goal is try to get them as well as possible. And so that's where physical therapy comes in. It's another means to work on lengthening those tissues. If you don't mind. So typically what happens is, you know, when we look at a connective tissue, which is your muscles, your ligaments, and your tendons under a microscope, if we had to say how they were interconnected, we should see tissues that are open and able to flex and to move. And typically what happens after an accident occurs is now what happens is those connective tissues, they literally start to shorten. And that's where that scar tissue and adhesion takes place, which in and of itself can now become a source of pain. So if those connective tissues are not moving properly, that's a source of pain. So we want to work on trying to get them back to their initial position as much as possible.
That makes sense. Yeah, okay. I mean, I think we covered quite a bit on the initial. A lot of people are very scared to go to the doctor. This is a different type of doctor. There's no shots unless you need pain management shots, but even then, it's rare in between for teenagers. It all depends on the accident and the injuries and the impact, and there's a lot of different factors. But for the most part, a lot of people are nervous about going to the doctor's office. It's a different type of experience than going to a regular doctor's office when you're getting treatment. It consists of a lot of therapy, as Dr. AJ was talking about, the chiropractic care, which is just manipulating, putting the spine and other joints back in place. Massage therapy and physical therapy to strengthen up the muscles. So I mean, there's a lot to it, but it's not scary, and that's the biggest thing I want you to take away from this, because it's therapeutic. But if you have a good team walking through the process and can help you really get past this, and a lot of teenagers get stressed. It's very stressful. I mean, a lot of them, they go through post-traumatic stress, meaning they're scared to be in the car. There's a lot of things that goes on, and we, as an attorney, we understand this, and we try to work with that person or that teenager to put them in the right, to see the right doctor, the right treatment, whatever the case may be, and put them with the right providers to make sure they have a full recovery, or as close as pre-accident stage as possible. So that's kind of what we do, and we work with great partners to make that happen. Of course, if you have your own physician, you know, by all means, we only recommend if you don't have a place to go to, but we do, if you don't have a place, we can definitely recommend people that we've worked with in the past, and then you can make it your choice from there. Dr. AJ, is there anything you want to add?
Sure. Well, I mean, listen, like Eddie said, when it comes to care for teenagers as well as adults, you know, I think the bottom line is this: be proactive. Make sure you get an evaluation early in the process, because even if pain isn't there right away, potentially the source for dysfunction is there. If it's something that's strong enough to bend sheet metal and plastic and hardware, the odds or the likelihood that it's going to have some impact on your muscles and your joints and your tissues is really, really high. The longer you wait, certainly the more likelihood of that problem maybe becoming worse without a doctor's intervention or care. And even if you're concerned about, you know, intervention, at least you have the idea of things you can do on your own, even just to start to feel better and to limit the damage that can occur from an accident. So.
Okay, well, Dr. AJ, I appreciate your help, and I know we'll be covering different videos on different topics. And please look out for the following videos. Like I said, we're interviewing a lot of different people to really provide a good, well-rounded resource for you. And at the end of the day, you can always call me, and if you know, we could also get together with Dr. AJ as well and get you treated as well. So, all right, guys, thank you for watching. Please share this video, comment, and tag other people as well. Thanks.